Hello, and thank you for tuning in to this special evening holiday edition of the Trip Hacks DC live walks around Washington, D.C. My name is Rob. I'm a tour guide and the founder of Trip Hacks DC Tours. So welcome to everyone who is tuning in. By request, we are going to do a special walk around the Washington, D.C. holiday lights this evening. So I appreciate that you have joined in with me here. So I am over by the Ellipse, which is on the south side of the White House. And if you look very closely, I'll point to the National Christmas tree right over there. And that is where we're going to start our walk. So, as people get settled in and join the live stream, I will begin heading over to the National Christmas tree. So once you've joined in, go ahead and say hello on the chat so that I can say hello and we can begin our walk. All right, so you may recognize this if you joined in on the live walk that I did a little bit earlier this month. It's going to be a similar but different walking route. Hello, John. Hello, Dale. Melissa, hello. Thanks for everyone who is tuned in. It is 5:30 p.m. here in Washington, D.C., and I'm watching my step because it is already completely dark. Bobby says, love your videos. Thank you, Bobby. I appreciate that you have watched the videos and that you enjoy them. Now, in prior years, I have led a Trip Hacks DC tour called the Monumental Christmas Tour. And if anyone who's tuned in has ever joined me on that tour, you will probably recognize this route from the tour. Now, the tour is about 2 hours long and includes both monuments and Christmas stuff. That's why I call it the Monumental Christmas Tour. Tonight's we're going to stick just to the Christmas lights. But just to give you an idea of what we are going to see, we are starting here at National Christmas Tree. And then we're heading over to the Willard, and we are going to see the outdoor lights that they have set up this year. The Willard Hotel, famous Washington, D.C. hotel institution. And then from there, we're going to walk all the way down Pennsylvania Avenue. The Canadian Embassy has a Christmas tree that is quite nice, and I like showing to people that come on the tour. And then we are going to go down to the Capitol and wrap up at the Capitol Christmas tree. Now, I asked folks in an Instagram poll which of the trees they were most excited to see, and I was pleasantly surprised to see that most folks voted for the Capitol Christmas tree, which is where we will be wrapping up tonight's walk. So when I take folks on the tour, I often say the National Christmas tree is much more crowded and much more popular, but I personally think the Capitol Christmas tree takes the cake. So you can let me know, once we've seen them both, what you think about the two competing Washington, D.C. trees. Got the Washington Monument in the back there. Pretty cool. So here we are coming up on the National Tree. Lewis says they're from Florida. Enjoys the channel. Now, take a look at this tree, and in the chat, let me know what color you think the lights on the National Christmas tree are, because this is quite an interesting optical illusion, I think. As you get closer, it changes a little bit. So from the back over here, I think in the camera it looks different from how it looks in my eye. So on video, what color do you think the Christmas lights are over there? Bobby, question, what video software do I use? I use Vegas to edit videos. I don't think it's very popular software, but it's what I'm good at, and so I enjoy using it. Dale says pink. I think that's a very reasonable guess, and I'll tell you why in a moment. Lewis says violet. Another very reasonable guess. So when we were pretty far away, I think that the color was, at least in the camera, it looked white. And as you get closer, it looks purple or violet or pink. Now the thing is that there are actually 3 colors of lights on there: red, white, and blue. And you only can really make them out once you get pretty far up close. And I thought this was interesting the first time I saw it, because from a distance it very clearly looked like a purple tree. But when I got up close, I realized it's not purple at all. So if you have ever experimented with Philips Hue or any of those color-changing LED bulbs, you know that if you ask it for purple, it makes purple by turning on a little bit of red and a little bit of blue. And you mix white in there, and it turns it a little bit pink. So well done, Dale, on identifying the color of the LEDs on the tree. Now, the National Christmas Tree is outside the White House. Some people call it the White House Christmas Tree. It's officially called the National Christmas Tree.
So many other things to try to satisfy the quench the thirst.
Now tonight, there is a bit of a line to get in to what's called the Pathway of Peace. So I'm going to head over to where that starts.
Let's start walking from.
Dale learned about color mixing in AP Physics. I only learned about it when I was experimenting with my color LED bulbs. Evan says a lot more people than I thought. Well, I think 2 things, Evan. One is that it is an excellent night weather-wise. Capital Weather Gang gave today a 7 out of 10 on their scale, and I would venture to say I'd call it an 8 out of 10. It's cool. It's about 40 degrees out here, but it is not cold, and most importantly, it is not windy. So it's a nice night, and it's still early. It's only 5:30, so people are going to come check it out before they go home and eat dinner and do their evening activities. The lights close at 10 o'clock, so you get a little bit closer to the 9-10 o'clock hour, and it gets a little less crowded. But we're going to begin over here. It's a one-way path this year to see the tree and walk what's called the Pathway of Peace. I did this walk a few weeks ago on a Sunday morning, and YouTube gave my video a copyright flag because of the Christmas music that's blasting on these speakers here. So I didn't even bother turning on the ads for this video, because I figure if they're going to make me pay it to somebody else, why make you watch them? So hopefully they didn't show you an ad before this live stream started. John, I am filming this on my cell phone. Melissa says pretty. I tend to agree. I hope that you can see the tree. It's quite bright over here. I am always a little nervous about doing this at night because you never quite know how cell phone camera will do after dark. Now, in the Pathway of Peace, there are these small cut trees. There are 56 of them total, and they represent the 50 states, the territories, and the District of Columbia. And the cool thing is that each tree, probably can't see because it's so dark, but underneath the name of the state is the name of the school or organization that provided the ornaments. So an elementary school from Kentucky provided these Kentucky-themed ornaments, which I think is pretty cool. All right, Simon says it's gorgeous and missing DC. Sorry you can't be here this year, Simon, but I agree it is very nice looking. So we're just waiting patiently for folks to file through. Now back here we have the Nativity. So if you are familiar with the story of Christmas, you've surely seen one of these nativities before. Now this year's National Christmas Tree is a little bit scaled back from previous years. So they usually have the Nativity off to the side, and it's a little bit bigger, I believe, if I can remember. My memory serves me from nativities in the past. And the other thing that's missing this year is the model train, which is personally my favorite thing about the National Tree, which is around the outside of the tree, inside the fence. I'm not sure if you can see the fence because it's black and it's dark out, but there's a short fence in there, and inside that fence they would have the model train set up. Sylvia is tuning in from Florida and was here last year and enjoyed the history. Well, I'm glad you got to enjoy the history, Sylvia. Peter from Sweden. Thanks for tuning in, Peter. What time is it in Stockholm, Sweden? I imagine it must be fairly late. Can't remember what time zone you're in, though. Yes, Troy, the model train is awesome and my favorite. So thank you for remembering that. Nice to see you. All right, so we're going to head out the other side on the Pageant of Peace. This is a cool view right here because you can see the White House on the left. You can see the tree lit up on the right. Ginger is looking forward to her trip in May. Well, I sure hope things are good for travel in May and that you can make it then. Simon says it's 10:42 p.m. in England. I appreciate you converting that to p.m., Simon, so that I know what time it is. So Peter is probably at least an hour off of that over in Sweden. So like I mentioned when we started, when I give this tour in real life, I always tell my guests that this tree is very popular, but at the end of the tour, I want them to tell me whether they like it more than the Capitol Christmas tree. And I'm going to make the same deal with you here tonight. It is almost midnight over there. Well, thank you for staying up until almost midnight, Peter, to join me. I don't think I would be able to stay up until midnight.
And offering the forgiveness of sin to all mankind.
All right, so the music was blasting in there, so we will see which copyrights I violated when YouTube processes the video and sends me an email and tells me that I had illegal music in my video. So the National Christmas Tree is a approximately 30-foot tall Colorado blue spruce from Virginia. If you're a plant person, you may know what that is. I am not a plant person. And the thing about the National Christmas Tree is it's a permanently planted tree. So this was not cut down this year for this occasion. It's here year-round. So if you've ever visited before and visited the ellipse, you may have walked past and seen it, or walked past and not even realized you were seeing it because it's only decorated 1 month out of the year. Now, the first National Christmas Tree was in 1923. An engineer who had previously worked at General Electric told Calvin Coolidge that it would be great to string some lights up on a big tree and show people how awesome light bulb and electricity technology was. And so they did. That was the first National Christmas Tree in 1923. And that means in 3 years we will be celebrating a 100th anniversary. All right, Sylvia is already voting for the Capitol Christmas Tree. We don't want to bias the others in the audience, so we shall wait and see. Melissa said did not know that. Well, hopefully you learn a thing or two as we make our way down the walking route today. So I'm not sure if you could tell on screen that there were red, white, and blue LEDs on the tree. I could just barely tell with my eye that that's what there was. So if it just looked purple to you, well, that's okay. Because even at purple, it's still a pretty nice looking Christmas tree. So if you visited outside of December, you may have seen just a big 30-foot tree of the park. And some people just kind of walk past, not even realizing what they're seeing. But that's it. That's the National Christmas Tree. Now the lights, there's so many lights on the tree that they can't just, hang them from the branches like you do at home. Like on my Christmas tree, there's a couple strings of lights and you just kind of stick them inside the branches and turn them on, and that's how you decorate your tree. That would completely weigh down the tree, weigh down all the branches if they did it like that. So instead, they put up a frame and then they cover the frame in this giant net. And so what you see at night is basically the lights on the net covering the tree. You barely even see any of the branches of the tree itself. So some people think that that's cool. Some people think it makes it look a little artificial. And that's one of the biggest differences between the national tree and the Capitol tree, is that the national tree is pretty much all lights, whereas the Capitol tree is a mix of lights and ornaments, much more similar to the tree that you might have in your own home. But I'm not going to spoil it too much because we will make our way over there, and we'll be there soon enough. All right, so as we make our way to the Willard Hotel, which is across the street, hello to everyone who has joined. Got a few dozen already tuned in. Happy Festivus. A Festivus for the rest of us, for all who celebrate. Today is December 23rd. So happy Festivus. If you haven't done your feats of strength yet, good luck when you do that after dinner. And if you haven't yet, just go ahead and in the chat, let me know where you are tuned in from. Alberto from Puerto Rico. Thanks for tuning in, Alberto. So this big, bright, well-lit building off to the left here, the Treasury Department headquarters, a building that did not get a lot of fanfare until recently. Hamilton, perhaps the best known Treasury Secretary. If you've seen Hamilton, you know that he is now a very popular guy. And so nowadays, there's a renewed interest in the Treasury building. All right, Alyssa from Maryland. Devil Cruz from Southern Virginia. Welcome all. Andrew asks if I'm going to tell you how disappointed I am in everyone. A true Festivus believer. If I was, I would tell you all the problems that I had with you people. But I'm more of a believer in Festivus miracles. So we'll see if we encounter any on our walk tonight. Tyler tuned in from Minnesota. Welcome, Tyler. Welcome, Melissa from Maryland, and Alberto. Now this construction site right across the street here, with the super bright light in the middle of it, that's kind of ruining the shot. This is the construction site for the National World War I Memorial. So if you've come on a Trip Hacks DC tour before, and we had time, because we don't always have time, but if we had time, I may have taken you to the DC War Memorial, or the District of Columbia World War Memorial. That is the only World War I memorial right now And it honors, specifically, the residents of the District of Columbia who fought and died in World War I. So we don't have a national memorial yet, but there is one under construction. After many, many years of fights over the design, after delays, after fundraising challenges, they finally started building it over here. And soon enough, you may be able to see it. Alyssa asks if I'm near the White House. Yes, I am. I was just at the National Christmas Tree, and if you rewind the video, you will be able to see the White House as I am leaving the Pathway of Peace. Mike is tuned in from Chevy Chase. Welcome, Mike. Named for the actor. I'm wondering if you're asking about Chevy Chase. Andrew, why so long to build a World War I memorial? Well, that's a long story, but the short answer is we didn't really build war memorials, at least not national war memorials, until the Vietnam War. We built that memorial, and Korean War vets thought that they deserved one, so we built a Korean War memorial, and World War II vets thought that they deserved one, so we built a World War II memorial. But by that point, there weren't many, or really any, World War I vets still around, so that one never got the priority. All right, so we are walking up on the Willard Hotel right now. People ask me for hotel recommendations all the time. This is one of them. I think as far as location goes, you can't get a much more convenient location than here at the Willard. And if you're gonna come in December, I think you might as well stay at what is considered the most festive hotel in all of DC. So if you've ever stayed at the Willard before, let me know, because I'm quite curious to find out about how it went. We've got a, looks like, formal photography session going on. There's the outdoor Christmas tree and the wreath here at the Willard. Try to get focused, but a little hard to do in the dark. Priyanka's watching from Gaithersburg, Maryland. Well, I'm happy to show you around, Priyanka. Andrew asks if there's a memorial to the Spanish-American War. No, well, at least not a big one, like some of the other war memorials. Sylvia says the Willard Hotel is so beautiful. And yes, the lobby is quite decorated, especially at this time of year. So when I do the real life tour, this is usually about the halfway point, and we pop into the lobby for a restroom break, for some warmth, depending on how warm or cold it is that day, and for some photos in front of the Christmas tree. I will not be going inside today, partially because I don't know how the reception is in there. I don't want to drop off. And also because I feel bad going in and not buying anything. Hey, Becca.
Oh, hi. How you doing, Rob?
Fellow tour guide there. Simon says he stayed at the Willard 3 nights, 2 Christmases ago. Yeah, if you're gonna come in December and you're willing to splurge a little bit, I would recommend it. Alberto asks, how is the temperature? I would say the temperature is quite nice. So like I was saying at the beginning of the stream, the Capital Weather Gang in the Washington Post, they rated today a 7 out of 10. Now you have to remember that that is a 7 out of 10 for the time of year. So today's weather wouldn't be great in, say, April, but for December, it's quite nice. It's about 40 degrees out here, and most importantly, it is not windy. Andrew says, looks expensive. Well, it's not an inexpensive hotel, but hotel rates in DC are very heavily dependent on whether there's something going on in town. So in the previous years, if you came to DC at a time when there were no conferences, when there were no business travelers here, you could get some amazing rates at some of the best hotels in town. Yeah, Evan says the Willard is pretty strict about videoing in the lobby. I would probably get asked to leave if I took this camera in there and was talking to myself. But, you know, when I take a group in there and I'm just snapping their photo in front of the Christmas tree, they're usually okay with that. Alyssa wants to know about DC Metro zones, and I don't know what DC Metro zones means, so I can't answer that question. I do have an entire video playlist about Metro, so hopefully one of them will answer the question, but I don't understand what DC Metro zones means. Yes, Melissa says the Metro is pretty dead with people working from home. The Metro used to get, in 2019, they got approximately 600,000 rides on a work day, and now they, are a tiny fraction of that. During the part of the stay-at-home order when most people were staying home and not going anywhere, it was something like less than 10% of the previous ridership was on the Metro. So I have ridden the Metro several times, and it is nice to not have to worry about being in there with a crowd because most people aren't using it. On the other hand, Metro has said that with no one riding and them not making any of the money on the fares, that they are going to have quite a financial crunch coming up. So something that I am quite worried about, but that I can't do anything about at the moment. Andrew asks, federal bailout for Metro? It is unknown at the time. So if you can see the Capitol Dome off in the distance, you know that we are beginning to walk down Pennsylvania Avenue. Yes, Evan says, Metro is canceling weekend service and closing down 13 stations, I hear. So, Metro put out a very alarming news release a few weeks ago. And the important thing is they said, if it gets to a worst case scenario, we will have to have no weekend service and close down 13 stations. So they are preparing for the absolute worst case scenario, but my hunch is that it will probably be bad, but probably not worst case. But I don't want to jinx it. It's out of my hands, so we shall see. So we will begin our journey down Pennsylvania Avenue here. One thing that is interesting about Pennsylvania Avenue is that depending on which side of the street you're on, you get a bit of a different history. So the side of the street that I'm on, this is the newer side of the street in the sense that most of the buildings here were built in more modern years, whereas on the other side of the street, many of the buildings were built in earlier years, so the architectural style is different. The feel of the street is different. And I'm going to be on both sides of the street because there is some construction a little bit farther down that will require me to cross the street. And so we're going to start on this side, what I already called, I guess, the newer side or the more modern side. And then we'll cross over once we get a little bit farther down. Pennsylvania Avenue has not always been the nicest street in town. During most of the 1800s, I think calling it a bit of a dump would be generous. It used to be a dirt road. People used to ride horses up and down the streets. And At some points in the 1800s, they'd say that the street was so bad that horses would break their ankles and have other injuries just from trying to get from one end of Pennsylvania Avenue to the other. And it's very embarrassing to have such a prominent street in such bad conditions. So there was an effort made in the 1900s to really clean it up and make it into a place where you'd be proud to walk down the street like we're doing right now. So if you're interested in this topic, I have an entire podcast episode with a guest who knows even more about the history of Pennsylvania Avenue than I do, but I highly recommend that one if this is a topic that interests you. Evan asks if I've seen Wonder Woman 1984, because there's a scene shot on Pennsylvania Avenue, and I don't know what kind of access you think I get, Evan, but I'm planning on watching Wonder Woman 1984 on Christmas on HBO, unless it's already out and I just missed that memo. But I have on my calendar that it is coming out on HBO on Christmas, which is in 2 days, and I plan on watching it right away. Michael says, hey from Georgia. Welcome, Michael. But I will say I did just watch the first Wonder Woman in anticipation of watching Wonder Woman 1984 because I knew that it was coming out. But yes, there is a bike lane in the center of the street, and filming a movie is not the kind of thing that they would remove that for, although I suppose they could have removed it in editing, CGI or whatnot, and they chose not to because they probably figured that most people don't know, or more likely, don't care. Most movies that are set in DC are not even filmed here, and then the movies that are actually filmed here, they rarely do a perfect job, although I will give them credit for doing their best. Ryan, welcome. You're in DC at this time of year. Last year, wonderful experience. Well, I'm glad you got a chance to come last year. I was just thinking about the tours that I ran last December and some of the wonderful folks who I got to take down this route and show the Christmas sights. So we've got a bit of construction up here on the left. Not rare to see office buildings under construction. Office buildings, they get old, they get renovated, they get new tenants, and they're constantly moving around. So up ahead on the right, on the other side of the street, you can see the Justice Department, an example of more classical style of architecture. And then, up here on the left, we have one of the most infamous buildings in all of Washington, D.C., the FBI headquarters, J. Edgar Hoover Building. Now, depending on who you ask, this may be the ugliest building in all of Washington, D.C. It was designed in the 1960s. It was debuted in the 1970s. It is a prime example of the architectural style of brutalism. And in the interest of not sparking a debate over brutalism, which I know is a hot topic, I will just leave it at that. Michael asks if the Metro bus is still doing rear door boarding. Yes, they are, and only for a little bit longer. They're then going to switch over to the more standard boarding, I believe, in January. Melissa says most of the government buildings are ugly. Well, I disagree. I think it's a mix. Some are very beautiful, some are not so beautiful, but I don't think I would characterize most of them one way or the other. Chad asks is this near Ford's Theater? Well, yes, it is. Ford's Theater is a little bit north of here. Not going to go past it tonight because it is not on Pennsylvania Avenue, but it is nearby. Now, the thing I don't love about the FBI is that there's nothing, absolutely nothing, on the street level, which makes this block one of my least favorite blocks in the entire city. Because on the next block, sure, it's an office building, but there's a bank on the ground floor. There's a Starbucks on the corner. There's a little restaurant in between. And so it feels more lively, feels more inviting. This block, it feels dead, desolate, and just not a pleasant place to be. It's not completely dark, but it is after dark, so. Bobby asks if I'm going to walk to the White House. Bobby, you're going to have to rewind and start from the beginning because that is where I started the walk. Andrew says, brutalism is an acquired taste. I think that makes sense. It definitely is very jarring the first time you see it. Boston City Hall is an infamous example of brutalism. And the first time I went to Boston, that definitely caught me off guard. One thing about the FBI headquarters is that it's in all the TV shows and all the movies about the FBI. So you see it all the time. And so you're walking down the street, down Pennsylvania Avenue, you see this building, you know exactly what it is because you've seen it a million times. Now about a mile, or about a half a mile away, in that direction, over by, let the ambulance pass, so it's quite loud. When people visit Washington, D.C. from a small town, one of the things they always comment to me about is the city noise, the sirens specifically. So that was an ambulance, but you also have police cars, fire trucks. Yes, as Evan says, the sounds of the city. So about half a mile in that direction is the FBI Washington, D.C. field office. So in the movie National Treasure, the scene where they go inform the FBI about the bad guys' plan to steal the Declaration of Independence, it always ruins everyone's time when I explain to them that if that were actually going to happen, they would be at the FBI field office, not at the full-blown FBI headquarters on Pennsylvania Avenue, but makes for better movie making. That is the National Archives, of course, right over there, which is why I brought it up. And the cool thing about that movie is that, just like Wonder Woman 1984, they made some effort to film the scenes in Washington, D.C. So, in the scene after Nicolas Cage has stolen the Declaration, he comes outside. Riley Poole's got the van parked on Pennsylvania Avenue right here. He runs across the street. They get in the van and then they go do the chase. Dale says there are no metro stations nearby. No, there's a metro station right there. The Archives Navy Memorial Metro Station, because we are inside the Navy Memorial. Now, I'm not going to spend a ton of time here for two reasons. One is because it's kind of hard to see it at night, but the second is because this is a much better summer monument, and the reason for that is because the Navy Memorial, as you can imagine, features a lot of water. And what do they not have turned on in the winter? The water. So it's not a bad memorial by any means, but much better to come and see in the summer. So perhaps I will come back when the weather's a little warmer. Of course, you have the ship's masts symbolism here, because it is the Navy Memorial. All right, we will continue on down Pennsylvania Avenue. And if you're just tuning in, I want to say happy Festivus. A Festivus for the rest of us, if you celebrate. And hey, if you've been watching, and you haven't already done it, if you could give this video a thumbs up, and that will let me know that you enjoyed it. I normally don't come out after dark, except to actually give a tour. But when I did this on Sunday morning, my usual time, people said, wow, the National Christmas tree is pretty cool, but I'd love to see it lit up at night. And enough people told me that I decided that I would come out after dark and show it to you live. So if you're enjoying the holiday lights, give us a thumbs up so I know that you are having a good time. Devil Cruise says that they like the Marine Corps Memorial better as a veteran Marine. Well, the Marine Corps Memorial is definitely taller, but it's much less convenient. One of the reasons why the Navy Memorial has such prime real estate here on Pennsylvania Avenue is thanks to a former Navy member named John F. Kennedy. And he really wanted to help revitalize Pennsylvania Avenue by having a Navy Memorial right in the middle of the street. So, oh, I'm sorry, I'm thinking of the Air Force Memorial, but the Marine Memorial is also cool. It is less convenient though. You do have to go over to the Virginia side to get to the Marine Memorial. Roslyn Metro Station, and then maybe a half-mile walk, so not inconvenient. They were doing a major overhaul on the Marine Memorial a few years back, and they moved the Marine Parade from the memorial to the steps of the Lincoln Memorial. And when I would take tours through there, they would usually just be wrapping up the parade. And one thing that some of the Marines told me was that because it was at the Lincoln Memorial, they were getting much bigger crowds than they got at the Marine Memorial, because typically people who went to the Marine Memorial really wanted to see the show, and so they would make a special trip out there to see it. People who were just out seeing the sights would see the parade happening at the Lincoln Memorial, and they would stop and grab a spot and watch it. So they definitely got a lot more people to see the show the year that they had it at the Lincoln Memorial. And I thought it was pretty cool because we would usually be coming through just as the show was wrapping up. And so people would be taking photos with the Marines and the band members. I have no idea how someone wears that heavy marching band uniform in the middle of July and marches around with a tuba. But I suppose if you're in a prestigious marching band like the Marine Corps Band, you've got the skills to do it. So it sounds like Devil Cruise likes the parade. All right, so continuing on down Pennsylvania Avenue. So we've got the National Gallery of Art across the way here. That's the West Building, where they have the collection of original art. And then a little bit farther down the street, the East Wing, where they've got the more contemporary stuff. All right, looks like I'm not going to have to cross the street today. Now, when I was here last week, the Newseum, or rather former Newseum, RIP, is under construction. They are converting it to space for Johns Hopkins University graduate school. And they had the construction all the way out to the curb, so I wasn't able to walk down the street. But today it looks like they've pushed it back a little bit, which is convenient for me. Quite a bummer that the museum closed. They did not close due to COVID. They closed on December 31st, 2019. That was their last day. The Newseum was a museum of the news. And right out front, One of the favorite things for me to show people when we did the Christmas tour, today's front pages. So leave a comment in the chat if you've ever seen today's front pages. But it was a collection of newspapers, front pages, one newspaper from each of the states, plus DC, and a handful of international newspapers as well. Used to be right in here. Almost impossible to see in the dark, but they're doing pretty heavy construction on the interior of the building already. So I'm not entirely sure how it's going to look or how they will convert a massive museum into an academic building, but they're working on it. Melissa said she saw Lady Gaga's meet dress at the Newseum. I'm not too familiar with Lady Gaga or her dresses, but that sounds pretty cool. And so, very sad that the museum is no more. When they closed, they said that they were going to attempt to find a new location, because before they opened this building up on Pennsylvania Avenue, they actually had their museum in Arlington, in Roslyn, in fact, and it was a smaller space, but that is what we called the original Newseum, or the old Newseum. Dale has been to the Newseum. Yes, the Museum of the Bible survived, but not the Newseum. I'm not sure who is funding the Museum of the Bible, but my hunch is that some rich people are paying the bills. Oh man, Andrew says the Newseum opened just after he left DC and closed just before he got back. And that, I have to say, is quite a bummer. Now, I already hinted at where we are, and perhaps you already know, but this is the Christmas tree at the Canadian Embassy, the U.S. Embassy to Canada, in the U.S. Any Canadians tuned in on the stream tonight? I like this tree a lot, and it is a cut tree, probably not from Canada, but it is quite large. They always go with a very minimal style of decoration, but if you can see, they use a white and a red bulb for perhaps obvious reason, and they've also got the large ball decorations here. I've seen many an Instagram of someone taking their photo inside one of these. Melissa says, very nice. Andrew says, nice tree, A. Little tease on the Canadian accent there. And you could just barely make out the Capitol Dome in between the tree branches over there, but it's back there. And I know there are many talented photographers who can do a better job than I of capturing the Christmas tree here. So I'm going to step out so these folks can take a photo. But this is the Embassy of Canada, quite a large embassy, and it's the only embassy in this part of town on this section of Pennsylvania Avenue. You got to give them props for the Christmas lights here. This is a huge office building, as you can see. The Canadian ambassador actually does not live here. He or she lives near most of the other embassies on the other side of town, near, Embassy Row and DuPont Circle. And you really can't tell the ambassador's home from the other nice-looking homes in the area, except for the fact that the ambassador's home flies a giant Canadian flag out front. But I suppose anyone could fly a giant Canadian flag out front if they really wanted to. Devil Cruz says, surprised they let you get that close to the tree. Well, the Canadians are very nice people, and perhaps more trusting than they ought to be. But yes, they do let us get quite close to the tree. And it is quite a nice one. I always describe the Christmas tree here as being very classy. I think it's because it's very simple. It doesn't have a bunch of ornaments. It doesn't have, a bunch of different colored lights. It's usually just one or two colors of lights. Of course, the Canadian colors. And I think that that's a nice contrast to some of the more colorful, more heavily decorated trees that you see around town. And if you've ever been here before on a tour, your tour guide probably took you inside the rotunda here and had you stand in the very center where the tree is located right now and speak, because it is an echo chamber in there. And whatever you speak, you hear echoed in all directions around you, which is not something that I think many people expect. All right, so as we depart from the Canadian Embassy, that means we just have one stop left on our walk of the holiday lights, and that is the Capitol Christmas tree. So of the three lights that we have seen so far, the National Christmas tree, the Willard Christmas tree, and the Canadian Embassy Christmas tree, how would people vote so far? Which one of those is your favorite? I will reserve my opinion to the very end to avoid biasing anyone's opinion. Dale put up 3 maple leaf flags. And Devil Cruz, so far, likes the Canadian tree. So does Simon. Simon, I believe that in Canada, they have the Queen on some of the money. But if you are Canadian, correct me if I'm wrong. Denise says I didn't point out the Canadian Embassy. I think I did. The huge office building in the back is the Canadian Embassy. Now this is the National Gallery of Art East Wing. And on the roof, right there, is a big blue rooster, which is probably not possible to see in the dark. But it is a very cool thing to see when the museum is open. Go up on the roof and take your photo with the big blue rooster. The Queen is the head of state in Canada. That is what I thought, but in the interest of not sounding foolish, if I was wrong, I asked you to tell me rather than to state it with confidence. Gary, tuning in from Wisconsin, thank you for joining in. I hope you can join a real-life tour someday. Dale thinks the Canadian money is really nice. What do you mean by that, Dale? You like the design of the paper money? Or you like the fact that they use dollar coins? Because I kind of like the dollar coins, I will admit. Not something that has ever caught on here. But it is quite handy. As you can see, we are approaching the Capitol Dome. We've got about 2 blocks to go. This is a well-lit block, but not much to see on it. So it will be a few moments, and then we will be arriving at the Capitol Christmas tree. Okay. Dale likes the loonies and the design of the plastic money better than the euro. I don't want to start any fights over who has the best currency, but I vaguely remember using the euro the last time I was there, and I thought it was pretty similar to the Canadian money, but maybe not as nice. I'll have to get my hands on some Canadian currency. Last year, someone asked me, for the first time ever, how often I get tips in foreign currency as a tour guide. And I thought that was a funny question because in 8 years of doing this, the answer is never. I have never gotten foreign currency as a tip. And I don't know why I would, and I don't know why anyone would give foreign currency. But it was an interesting question, nonetheless. Devil Cruz says, thanks for doing this, of course. Happy to do a quick walk down part of my Christmas tour route. Spencer says he's in Maryland and it's cold. How cold is it in Maryland or your part of Maryland? It's about 40 degrees here. But the key thing is that it is not windy today. So 40 degrees feels quite nice. When I came out here a few weeks ago and did one of these on Sunday morning, it was much windier and it did not feel nearly as nice. So I don't mind a brisk winter day as long as it's not windy. And that is exactly what tonight is. So what is the weather like where everyone's tuned in from? Christmas in Washington, D.C. is not going to have great weather from what the predictions are calling for. Looks like it's going to get really wet and rainy tomorrow on Christmas Eve. And then it looks like it's going to be bitterly cold on Friday, Christmas Day. So that's why I wanted to come out here tonight, because doing this in the rain, a cold rain, would not be fun for you or for me. Spencer says it's about 42 in Annapolis, but the wind chills are what killed me. Yes, I agree. The wind chills kill me too. When it's 40 degrees and windy, it is a bit tough. So as we approach the Capitol tree, you're probably looking at the Capitol Dome, which is the prominent feature. But once we get past this super bright light over here, you'll be able to much more clearly see the tree over here in the distance. Chicago is about 30 degrees Fahrenheit, below freezing. Although in Chicago it can get a lot colder than 30 Fahrenheit. 43 in Baltimore, nice night, very similar, Latricia, to how it feels here. I have given this tour, this Christmas tour, when it's been 60 degrees and we were sweating at the end. I've given it when it's been 20 degrees, and even though we stopped for coffee and hot chocolate, we were still freezing the whole time. That's December in DC. You never quite know what you're going to get. So at the beginning, I said when we got to the end, I was going to ask everyone whether they preferred the National or the Capitol Christmas tree, and I'm still going to do that. Dublin, Ireland is 39 degrees. That's pretty similar to what it is here. And thank you for converting to our degrees, Danny, because last time I was in Ireland and had to use Celsius, I was confused the whole time. So the Capitol Christmas tree is different from the national tree in several important ways. Firstly, it's not a permanent tree, it's a cut tree, just like the one in your home. And every year, they pick a tree from one of our national forests, and then the tree goes on a tour and travels, a route from where it came from to right here at the Capitol. This year's tree is an Engelmann spruce from Colorado, and it is, I forget the exact height, I had it in my memory earlier, but it is approximately 60 feet tall. It's about twice as tall as the national Christmas tree. The camera doesn't do it justice, though, because with the Capitol Dome towering over the landscape, it doesn't look as tall as it is. But if you were to put this thing right next to the national tree, you would see it is much brighter. Now, this is much more the classic American style of Christmas tree. You've got those big bulbs. You've got them strung right on the branches, and you've got a whole bunch of different colors. You've got the whole rainbow of colors here. So while the Canadian tree used 2 colors and the national tree used 3 colors, this one is that classic style of all the colors. Andrew says beautiful tree. Spencer says amazing tree. Melissa says wow. And Danny is 3 American flags and a mussel. I think I know what that means. But the other thing that I really like about this tree, and unfortunately I can't get much closer than this year, and it's not going to be possible to see on the camera, is that there are ornaments on the tree that are themed for the place where this tree came from. So like I said, this year's tree comes from Colorado. And so you will see Colorado-themed ornaments on the tree. Last year's Capitol Christmas tree came from New Mexico, and I loved the ornaments that they put on the New Mexico tree. They had ornaments with aliens on them from Roswell. They had green chilies. They had the New Mexico state flag, which in my personal opinion is one of the best state flags that there is. Simon says he prefers this tree to the national tree, if only for the story behind it. Well, I prefer this tree too, so I'm just gonna give my opinion now. I like this tree a lot. I think it's a better tree. I think it's much less crowded. I think it's a cool experience. But I think the story behind the national tree, which I only told you a tiny fraction of, is quite interesting. And in the future, maybe next Christmas, I'll be able to tell the much longer story about the national Christmas tree, because it is quite fascinating. Melissa says this one is the best. Yes. And Circulator 2011 also prefers the Capitol tree. Any winter activities that I would recommend? Well, I have a video on winter activities that I would recommend, and many of them are not running this year. So unfortunately, I don't have much to offer this year, aside from the outdoor sights and the outdoor lights. Annaline says Merry Christmas. It was great seeing the trees. Well, thank you, Annaline. Danny J, beautiful with a Santa and 2 Christmas tree emojis. And Leo likes this one better. So I don't think anyone has voted for the national Christmas tree yet. But that's okay, because I think that the Capitol Christmas tree, and this is one of my favorite views right here. I've taken many of this photo over the years. Josh, hello from Erie, Pennsylvania. And thank you for joining in on the stream. So over here, that building is the U.S. Botanic Gardens. And that's, in the past, kind of been Christmas headquarters in Washington, D.C., because they go all out for Christmas. They deck the place out, the plants, and they have the train room, which is one of the coolest rooms. It's, open for about a month, and I always try to make a point to see the train room. And the other thing is that the U.S. Botanic Garden, in a non-COVID year, is one of the only things open on Christmas Day. Christmas Day is a day when almost everything is closed. The Smithsonian museums, in a non-COVID year, are open 364 days per year, every day except for Christmas. But the U.S. Botanic Gardens is the one that does stay open on Christmas Day. Annaline coming in from South Africa. I'm glad that the videos have been helpful. Thanks for checking them out. What time is it where you live in South Africa? I'm not even sure what the time zone is over in your part of the world. Danny is trying to stuff the ballot box for votes for the Capitol Christmas tree, which is okay. There's no rule against voting multiple times for your favorite Christmas tree. But I tend to agree that this one is quite spectacular. So, if you follow the National Christmas Tree on Facebook or on social media, next year, when they announce where the tree will be coming from, they'll also post the tour route. And if you happen to live along the route, then you can check it out as it passes through. Spencer also likes the Capitol Christmas tree the best. Well, this has concluded our virtual walk from the National Christmas Tree all the way over here to the Capitol Christmas tree. And so we've covered a little more than a mile today. We started just to the north of the Washington Monument. You might remember I had the Washington Monument in the background at the very beginning. And then we traveled all the way down Pennsylvania Avenue until we reach our final stop over here. So with that, I will say thank you for joining me to see the lights. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and most importantly, Happy Festivus, and Happy Holidays, of course, to all, no matter what holiday you celebrate. And so, there won't be a Trip Hacks DC video this week, as I will be taking the week off for the holiday, but there will be a new podcast episode on January 1st. So if you are interested, please check PAX DC Podcast. That will give you some content that you can enjoy in the meantime. And if you're still here, then that means that you obviously really liked the stream. So if you could, please give a thumbs up on YouTube to this video so that I know that you had a good time. And if enough people had a good time, maybe I'll do this again. So with that said, good evening, good night, and enjoy.